present. I don't see
the
it.
other two online yet. They're both
Okay,
on.
okay, so we have five. We have five. Quorum is present. I will move for an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, motion and seconded. All in favor?
I have a second.
So
Aye.
She seconded.
Did you second?
seconded.
Aye.
Okay. All in
Can you
favor?
see me?
Aye.
Hello.
I can see and hear you, Tracy. I just am not getting Mandy.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, it can move with four. So we'll go ahead and move it with four. I'm not seeing Tracy, but it does pass.
Oh, this is the owl that follows you.
It follows us up there.
Yeah.
Okay, it has been motioned, approved. We can move on to the work session. Dr. Russell?
All right, we're going to go through a couple of things around the concern that was brought forth around our curriculum in our Intro to Psychology course. And so we're going to cover three main things. The first one is just to give a general overview of the curriculum, to try to get some background knowledge about it. And then we'll go in to discuss some of the concerns that were brought forth around the curriculum. And then we'll hopefully end the night with discussing what to do if concerns are brought forth in other curriculums going forward, a process that we can kind of move with that. So I'm going to start first of all by talking through kind of a curriculum overview. And so the course that was brought forth was an Intro to Psychology course that was taught at Nampa High School. We try to find out how long we have taught the course in Nampa for quite some time. Mr. Yarborough next to me was a former teacher right back in 2008, so we started there. And then we talked with a couple of administrators who used to work at some of the other schools where Mr. Yarborough got his curriculum from. And then Mr. Knopp, our curriculum instruction director, he actually had taught it back in the 80s, and then he got it from someone before him. So we can trace it back at least to the mid to early 90s, so about 30 years or so. And taught in Nampa. It was adopted, the curriculum that we currently have was adopted in May of 2019. Is OpenStax is the name of the curriculum. And
Can we clarify that after watching the video, or do you want to wait till after you're done with the presentation, Chairman?
I think it's up to you guys, trustees. Do you want to let Dr. Russell present a question, or do you want to ask questions now?
Both.
Both?
Can I just provide clarification on the, so I want intent was for OpenStax to be approved in May of 2019. It was not in the motion, so it was clearly presented to the board. There were no concerns, there was nothing saying that, but with the motion that was made and approved, OpenStax not approved, just because it was left out of the motion, but it was clear that it was in the presentation and the recommendation. That's where I'm going to just use the example that the intent for the approval was there. And I've been picking on the legislature a little bit, like sometimes the intent of some of the rules that get approved, they don't always clear. It doesn't go through the way they intended because the motion or the way it was written doesn't always go with how it was intended to do. So moving forward, we just need to be clear with all approvals, because it was not approved in that particular motion, but it was presented clearly that it was ready to move forward with.
so did send out that video to you guys. If you sent that out not too long ago and told you what part of the meeting to watch, and you can see in that meeting, as Clerk Lamont had mentioned, Senate was named. At that point, I think it was Trustee Lewis who made the motion for the recommendation. In that recommendation or that motion that she made, she did leave that out. And so it appears that, yes, technically that is accurate. The intent was clearly presented to the board that psychology was part of the adoption of the social studies curriculum. But the actual motion that was worded by the trustee at that point and then voted on, I think it was seconded by Trustee Rost and then voted on by the rest of the board, did leave that out. And so that is some of that confusion, and appreciate the clarity for that. Any questions on that at all, that piece?
Trustee Pearson, Trustee Simpson, I'm still not, do we have Trustee Simpson? Okay, any questions for you guys?
I just had a question regarding that curriculum on the psychology class. the board approved it, but who was the curriculum director at the time who brought that to recommend to the board?
It was a committee. At that teen was in instruction director at that time, and then the committee was brought forth, had educators from each of the areas of social studies, so like government, history, psychology was in there, and then it had 5 community members were a part of it, and then
Your presenter is different. Your presenter isn't Lori.
no, the presenter was Cindy Dion.
Cindy Dion.
Was part of the team in that. So, but I actually have the list here. It was, we had some middle school folk, because middle school was a part of that adoption. So some middle school teachers, some high school teachers, and some parents and community members were a part of that. And it looked like there was a total of 1, 2.
Okay, so none of the directors or staff that we're familiar with today, since we've been trustees.
Well,
So Lori Mon is still with the district. She is now,
Right.
she runs second nation. Elementary,
Right.
sorry, thank you, elementary. And then Cindy Dion is no longer with the district. If you watch the video, she had the short blonde hair.
Okay, so Lori was not
Got
the curriculum director then. It was Cindy.
Was she the director?
she was the director at that
She
time.
was the director, not the presenter.
Lori. Okay, thank you.
Of that committee, superintendent, what was the ratio of parents, community members, and to teachers?
Yeah, at that point, the law was a quarter, needed to be, this is before the new law came in. There were 1, 2, 3, 4. There were 5 parents, community members. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the middle school, and then 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 from the high schools. And I think each of the high school kind of represented. There was 1 administrator in the high school, and then special ed, and then I think some of them were government teachers and history teachers and so on.
Okay.
All right, and so also wanted to, I gave some information with you about kind of where I thought it'd be good to have some background on where it fits within the course catalog for the district. So a little background, our district for about 20 years has been pushing hard to have more options for kids, more options for families about courses to take. So if you look and become familiar with our course catalog, you'll see the district has a great amount of options there. For our size particularly, we provide about as many options as West Ada or some of the larger school districts. I was going to maybe focus your attention on page 7 of that, if you would, and you'll see those are our AP advanced placement courses and our dual credit opportunities. And psychology, one of those courses that that. So some of our high schools do provide the course as a dual credit course where they can get college credit for taking it. So it's one of the options, and you can see we have many in there. So this is actually a great highlight for the district. Many of our students earn dual credit. I think we had over 3,000 credits earned by mid-semester, which was awesome to see and hear. Our kids are actually using their fast forwards money and getting college credit while being in high school. So.
Sure, Taylor, just so that the board's aware, all dual credit classes, as long as they are dual credit, the state board approves their curriculum for dual credit classes that are through their entities.
But for full transparency, when we looked into it, Columbia and Skyview operate this as a dual credit, correct? But Nampa High operate this as a dual credit, or did we get to the bottom of that?
We do not have as a dual credit Nampa High currently. However, we do have an intro course, which is not a dual credit course that is in the course catalog and offered as well. Of course, and that has varied, being a semester long at certain locations, including Nampa High, and a year long at Columbia, which is the intro course, not college credit. And there is also a college dual credit course. So both offerings are there for students. Again, to Dr. Russell's point, that we're trying to give as many options as
As
we can to
possible.
students.
On the back side of that page, you'll see our CTE, our college, our career technical education. We also have some courses where students can earn some credits around that as well. And so it just kind of shows the options in there, but wanted to see where some of the courses fit. Appreciate Mr. Yarborough kind of mentioning that as well. On the kind of see that example, I kind of included a piece of paper that had what classes are where and then how many students are enrolled currently in those. I thought that'd be some good background knowledge for you. So it's on the bottom page of your, if you look at it, it looks like this kind of white page.
Maybe that's the one I didn't get, or that everything else, but.
I don't have that one either. I wasn't here, but I get this. Do you need it?
You must have dreamed it.
I lied, I have
Margaret, do you
it.
yours?
I have
didn't
it.
get that.
I have it.
Maybe I'm writing on mine. Nope, that's the agenda.
So I have one.
Well,
Here, I'll share with my.
probably it's around here somewhere here. So as mentioned, there is an intro to psych class at Columbia High School. We had 106 students take that in the first semester. It's actually a year-long course. So there's 101 right now in the second semester. So some of the students, either moved away or didn't take it. Most likely probably moved. So one course there, it's an intro to psych class at Columbia High. Intro to psych class at Nampa High is a semester course. And so we had 72 kids take that semester, semester. So overall, an intro to psych. Currently, right now, we have about dual credit courses in psychology. At Columbia High, we had 29 students taking dual credit with that. We're at Skagit, credit, and 40 currently right now. 7 kids currently right now taking dual credit for psychology courses. Any questions on that at all?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, I got a
Can you hear me?
question real quickly, just for clarification.
Yeah, trustee Pearson, really quick, Marco or trustee Valle has a question and then I'll come directly to you. Does that work?
Perfect. Thank you.
So just to repeat what we said before, with dual credit, we have no options with what we get from the state. Is that correct?
So the state board does approve the dual credits, but we also work with the universities that provide that credit. And so what our teachers typically do is they will create a syllabus that talks about the content that would be covered in the course. And it has to match the content typically of the university that provides that credit to our students in that. So we are limited in what we can do with that. I'll talk about some options that we could do moving forward. We might be able to have some conversations with it. But
That would be good, because I like to see options with regards to community values and how does that fit in.
Well, and I also want to point out the class in question was not dual credit. I just don't want
Yeah,
there to be
it's
any
not.
confusion. Okay, good. I just don't
But
want
I
there
want
to
to
be any
make sure that
confusion.
we encompass, we do something that
Yes.
represents everything that our
Totally
kids
get
are
it,
taught.
yes. But I just want to make sure so that you understand that the standards that would apply to a dual credit would not have applied to this class because it wasn't dual credit.
Yes.
Okay,
No, I totally.
okay, good. Trustee Pearson?
Yeah, and that was my question, and sorry it's cutting out a little bit, so I apologize if I repeat anything that's already been answered. So, Superintendent Russell, you're going over this dual credit because I know the biggest concern with the community right now is what we found in that test in the psychology class regarding gender, which is very disheartening and hard to see that you're students over this. So that's why we're all here. So I'm kind of confused why we're bringing in the dual credit if it's because I'm hearing from Chair Taylor that it's not required because, quite frankly, this transcends a lie to say that a female can be a male or a male can be a female. And it's so destructive and so wrong. And that's what the community is here today to find out, that we can remove this kind of stuff from our curriculum. I'm just asking again for clarity.
Sure.
Is this something we can remove? Because this is so
Where we're going with this.
destructive
Got it?
And
Okay.
just because
So,
you know,
I think you might out. I think all right, I think I just have the question. So what I was trying to do is just let you know that there are several different types of courses. The intro course typically does lead into the dual credit course. As we talk about some of the options where if there are some adjustments we need to make to the course, I want the board to be aware of that may have an impact as the students go into dual credit. And we can talk through that. But I just wanted to have a simple overall of what these are. Absolutely understand the other part of the agenda. We will talk about the concerns that were brought forth and share those.
so,
That answer.
okay, so to clarify again, sorry, the reception's a little bad. You're telling us this because if we change the psychology class, it affect the students when they want to use this to go into the dual credit class with college?
We can't.
Superintendent Russell,
So,
can you hear me?
I don't,
Yeah, Tracy, you were cutting out pretty bad there.
so why don't I just try? So,
Hello?
Trustee Pearson, I asked Dr. Russ, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Maybe we should just.
Yeah,
Sure.
the bandwidth may not be
Yeah.
enough for this audio, so just put it on the phone.
So, Trustee Pearson, can you mute? And we're like we did last time, and we'll just set you in the middle so we don't delay. Trustee Simpson, can you say
Sure.
words just to make sure we're rolling?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you, Trustee Simpson. So what we'll do is we'll just keep Pearson.
Okay.
Tracy, are you on the phone?
I'm on here. Did you get the work session agenda? Okay.
I can't look at us. I'm on.
So they're doing see that first and foremost, because this all of these or not necessarily there's like multiple classes taught under this umbrella. So I think
You can just overview some of the learning targets for the course for the learner to understand the interaction between biological factors and identify major structures and functions of the brain.
Do we have this?
I don't think you do.
It's in this one. This is national.
Those are the national standards, and so I'll kind of get to that in a second.
do you want that copy for all of us?
Sorry to interrupt, I just want to
No,
make sure
that's
we're
okay.
all on the same page.
Yeah.
Literally.
So it was around, and then the learner will understand, I'll just share it, so around the brain functions, understanding the brain.
He's getting the sound back, there's no sound in the overflow.
That's okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, they can, yeah.
There's a stage up here, they can see this.
Yes, they could even come up here. There's seats over here. You guys can sit over here too. If you guys want to.
They have a pretty good rhythm. There may be that a lot of people are using the internet and they can.
Probably, I mean, it's so full. You're streaming to places. Yeah, there's no, right? I don't know. Maybe not. Because it's never kind of hard to because we're using the owl.
Until they can be composed, so that
Okay,
was
we
the
can
portion.
continue. Okay. All right. So do we want to try to continue? Okay.
I'm sorry, Dr. Russell, before, can you just make sure that everybody knows, you just need
Yeah.
it quiet?
Yeah. Really quick, we want you guys all have to continue this room, so we just need silence in the room to the very best of everything. Thank you.
If nobody moves, it affects the signal.
Don't breathe even. No, that's not, just if you guys can keep the noise down, that would be great. Okay.
All right, so some of the learning targets of the course were to understand the functions of the brain. Others were to show different perspectives of personality traits over the human lifespan. Another one was to show perspectives of mental illness and psychological disorders. Another was to show the perception of interaction of people in their environment, how the environment in fact influences people. And the last one was to understand the physical and chemical addiction and how that impacts students. So those were some of the main objectives of the course. In your information you have, I did include, because one of the questions that came up, and we'll talk around patron concerns in just a moment, was what standards did this cover and where were those standards? And so the state of Idaho does not have standards for psychology, but there is a national standards that the course was designed off of, and it comes from that document that you have there. It's another blue one. This comes from the American Psychology Association. And if you turn to, it's page 18, that document, you'll see the main themes that it covers. So kind of like this. And so you'll see there's several pillars that it has, and underneath them it lists the main things to be taught in those pillars. It mentions in stars some of the, I guess, I don't know, lack of a better term, kind of essential standards, if you will, of topics to cover in psychology courses in high school. This course, or the concerns that we come under the one, which is social and personality pillars. Underneath that, you'll see there's the social personality, and then there's multiculturalism and gender, and motivation and emotion.
Can I just make a clarification on this? So the asterisk, not necessarily to what you mentioned, but the asterisk, I mean, right here in the footnote, it said these areas of study should be considered a priority for instruction. I think that's a little different than what you just.
Yeah, essential standard priority. And
so the social and personality pillar, the multiculturalism and gender, is a priority to be taught to the students according to the national. Okay, I just want to make
Yes.
sure.
That's where it comes into place, and
Yeah,
that's
I know
where
where
you
it
find
comes
it.
into play,
Okay,
but I
good,
was
yeah.
just wanting a little bit different than what Dr. Russell was saying.
Yep, and knowing that, I think because some courses are semester versus year long, I think that's why there's that delineation, and not part of the American Psychology Association. I don't know otherwise than that. As I noticed that. All right, any other questions on that? Like, again, you'll see, I think there's more information in here if you would like to learn more about EPIC. It breaks it down as you go through the document there. Again, I sent this out to you guys and thought it'd be just some helpful information. If not, we can head towards the concerns that we're here for, the concerns that we heard, and if there's other questions we have.
So I'll clarify. Trustees, do we have any other questions on what was just covered? If not, Dr. Russell is going to head directly into concerns.
Okay, maybe he's heading into this and gonna answer this. And I'm sorry, it's hard for me to hear. Just to clarify again, when he just went over the gender, this is a requirement in some of the classes that are dual.
So, no, let him reference that to you, that this is a national standard. Do you want to reiterate that to her? And
What's the national standard?
he's gonna, Trustee Pearson, I'm holding you a little bit closer and I'm gonna have him reiterate that, okay? Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, so Trustee Pearson, one of the questions that came in the concerns was, what standards are these? The state of Idaho doesn't have psychology standards. There are national standards that the American Psychology Association has put out for high schools. What I was sharing with trustees was the main components of those standards, and then underneath it lists the main standards to be taught. And multiculturalism and gender is one of those that is under social and personality pillars. And then I discussed with that there are asterisks is a priority. And I think it was because of priority based on whether you teach semester or year-long courses. At least those are the courses that the American Psychology Association believes are important.
And Trustee Pearson, he did that because he got the question is, where is this aligned in standard? So the reason that that question got answered is that that was one of the email questions that we received.
All right.
And you're welcome. And can you hear better right there? Because I can just leave. Okay, I'm going to leave you right there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I looked into that too, and you're right. That the state doesn't have any type of standards with regards to psychology, but it does have standard, and it doesn't even have standards with regards to sex education either, from what I read.
Did you say sexification, Trustee Bay?
Yes.
Okay, I just was making sure that I heard you correctly.
But I did read in Idaho
Sex
statute.
education. Thank you. I thought, okay, thank you.
I did, I'm sorry.
That's why I was-
I will repeat myself because
you.
I know my accent.
No, I love your accent.
Oh, I love you too. Okay. Idaho statute 33-1608 states that the primary responsibility of family life and sex education rests with students' home and church, and that the schools can only complement and supplement those standards which are established in the family. Local school boards may decide for sex education, which I believe this is in a psychology class. If a school board institutes sex education program must place major emphasis on the home, including appreciation of the important place the family home holds in the social system of our culture. Family and church are as areas of importance of learning such knowledge. School boards must include parents and community groups in all aspects of instituting and evaluating sex education programs. Obviously, this is not a program, but to me, it's almost coming really close to it. In addition, the statute states that programs should give young people the scientific, physiological information for understanding sex and its relation to the miracle of life. They must also include knowledge of the power of the sex drive and necessity of controlling the drive of self-discipline, parents and guardians who wish to excuse their children, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what this is telling me is that there's a relationship to, which man, a lot of people care. Yeah. So without, I mean, thank you for coming. I mean, this is basically what it's all about, right? Integrating the school with our community values and making sure everything works together. And when it comes to studying about sex in any way, shape, or form, I know our society is changing and a lot of things are being permissible right now. But our community values, as I've stated many times, we're almost close to 70% conservative in this city. And I want to make sure that our community values are represented with that.
Yes.
So, and I have talked with Mr. Russell about this and Mr. Yarbrough and with members of the community. Actually, I've been invited to several places and I can't remember names, so I apologize. But people are concerned, and I believe the district is also concerned. And I appreciate the fact that we were able to put this thing together so that we can talk about this and put some way into what the community, family, of our city, and even churches, which is outlines in there, and a presentation that makes sense, and that the district that can hear those whatever it is that I'm trying to speak English. The district can take that information and make the best use that will benefit our students. Because I know the district wants what's best for the students. I know at times it may not seem that way, but a lot of times things pop up in curriculum that people are not aware of, because curriculum is so huge. And I'm finding out that even though they can present to you this part, and they only present this little bit when you're trying to look for curriculum, there's a lot of little things that are thrown in there, and we have to be able to figure out, okay, how can we create policy or put something in place so that we can instruct our teachers that if something like that, it's not okay to bring it in. Because I believe no matter what curriculum, and there may be some really clean curriculum out there, but I think most of it's going to have things like this. But we have to be prepared for it. So that's where I'm coming from. Maybe I'm just blabbing in different places, but I'm looking at the statute of the state, which gives, I believe it gives power to the people, and it allows for communication and openness, and it allows for weighing the community values. I think we can resolve this very easily. Anyways.
Is there any other trustee who wants to comment at this time?
I was just gonna say that, again, I do think this meeting's good, that we can come together and maybe, work on, having a session or a procedure where we can figure out how to have a review curriculum committee, because these curriculums are so huge and there's so many sprinkles of things within them. And, hopefully we can work out a review committee to go over curriculum to help stand to the values of the community, as Marco has said. I agree.
Any other trustee want to comment at this time? Trustee.
Well, no, I think
Okay.
we're at this point.
Yep,
where-
perfect.
And
So,
Marco did a lot of foreshadowing.
So, moving on to a concern. So a concern was brought forth in the class. There was a quiz that was given, and I'll review some concerns. I asked Mr. Yarbrough, as a former kind of teacher who taught it, kind of to share how that fits within what was taught, and then we'll go through the specific concerns that were brought forth, and then some concerns. We did meet with the patrons, had a good meeting with them, and I'll share some of the other documentation they brought forward from the text with it. So the questions, there was a quiz that was 25 questions long. It covered behavioral psychology, it's around behaviorism. It went into attachment theory. It discussed parenting styles. And then it went into some kind of application scenarios about unconditional and conditional stimulus and response. And then there was a reinforcement and punishment, some questions on that. And then sex and gender. And so the two questions that there was confusion on and concern around was given the following definition, how many sexes are there? And the definition underneath the question says, sex is a biological and physical manifestation of a person's chromosomes at birth. And the answers, multiple choice, were fewer than two, more than two, but fewer than 10, and a currently indeterminate amount. So the answer there in that class was more than two, but fewer than 10. And I believe the reason for that was because they were talking about XY chromosomes. And while the vast majority of folks have XY or male, there are few, very few slight birth defects at birth. And I think that's what they were trying to clarify in it. But that raised up one of the questions there. The other one, the last question, question 24, says, given the following definition, how many genders are there? And it says, here's the definition underneath it. Gender is a sociological construct of both how one sees oneself and how society's expectations of masculinity and femininity, and that's the definition. And so, again, fewer than two, more than two, but fewer than 10, and a currently indeterminate amount. I believe the last answer, currently indeterminate amount, is in that. And so was supposed to be the correct answer. So that was sent. Initially, it was like, what the heck's going on? And that was kind of the question. So I'm going to ask Mr. Yerber if you would kind of just share how that kind of fits within behaviorism, so we have some general understanding of that. Yep. And then we can go on and talk more about the concerns. Trustee Pearson, do you have a question?
Yeah, I thought there was a few other questions, like, is gender a choice?
There were.
And they put no, and that was wrong. And is sexual attraction a choice? That a strange answer.
I think that there are more questions in that test, but I believe you have it.
I mean, as far as the, I just feel like the ones that you focused on, I think you kind of rationed them away to be acceptable.
Maybe I should explain what we discussed with the patrons. Okay, hey, Trustee Pearson, I am gonna actually explain patrons. That might be really helpful, yeah. So the patrons that brought forth our concern were zones for parents. So when I discussed their concern with them, I asked them to immediately email the board, copying Dr. Russell and Clerk Lamont. And we sent in that immediate request of like, where was this approved, like the standard questions, et cetera, to start the process. So then we met with the patrons as well, and we actually covered this robustly. So I don't know that it's meant to downplay as much as picking questions, but it did cover like, oh my gosh, now I'm even trying to think without having it in my hands. Yeah, so so everything that was emailed was in there. And then it also goes into where like, definitely questions regarding social construct, definitely questions that would make it so like if you had one belief, there was only one answer and it didn't encompass for another belief. So we covered that quite robustly with the patrons. So I want to make sure, and maybe just for clarity's sake, because maybe that's not coming through, we actually met with, dissected the test, went over the test. So those were very much present.
Okay, so I just, because I received also the email that the parents and the questions, she actually sent the questions in as well.
Yep.
And so did you guys discuss this question, because it's pretty.
We haven't discussed any.
So
Was that a question, and how was it answered?
Yeah, so we did discuss those, and it was answered only with one social construct in mind. So so the answer would have been like, here, let me see your test so I can actually read. Thank you, sir. Thank you, if I can see it.
So you're telling me that
so
gender
for
choice is not a straightforward question?
No, I'm trying to tell you that the way that the teacher accepted the answers, it only gave light to one belief of social construct, which was the opposite of that. So can I read you a couple of the questions that I think you're wanting to hear aloud?
Maybe just answer that question.
So re-ask. So let me tell you what the test says, because I feel like it said.
It says in the you asked. That's the actual.
Was it 22?
22 and 23.
So it says, so 22 said, is a person's sex choice. The The possible answers were yes, no, and it depends on who you ask. Research is currently inconclusive. The correct answer was what? No. Then the next one was sexual attraction a choice. Yes, no, it depends on who you ask. And then it was given the following definition, how many genders are there? Gender is a sociological construct of both how one sees oneself and society's expectations of masculinity and femininity.
I'm sorry, they can't.
No,
Okay.
I want to speak to
But
that.
I think you should let Chairman go first and then.
Sorry,
go
just
to
trying to make sure that
conversation.
these things are being
Moving on.
read aloud so that, okay, perfect. And then that one was fewer than two, more than two, but fewer than 10, and currently an undetermined amount. And neither, like the two or the fewer than two, it was the currently an undetermined amount, right? So that was the one that definitely came into question during that meeting because they said currently an indeterminate amount. So those were the ones, and the last one says, is gender a choice? Yes, no, and it depends on who you ask. So those are all on this test that we have here, and we did cover all of those questions with the patrons.
Can I have the answer to this question? Is gender a choice? What is the question number?
So I believe that it depends on who you ask, and research is current, and that was the point meeting was that was why it only gave you one social construct. Like it doesn't even give you the option to say no child would have failed.
So am I hearing for clarity that you agree that there is other gender choices besides female and male? Is that what this test is saying? I mean, I'm as confused. as
Yes,
you.
so the test, so what you're hearing is the test absolutely only said that it depends on that who you ask. Research is inconclusive. So if you were a child or anybody taking this test and you would have asked, is gender a choice? And you would have marked no, you would have failed the question. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, which I think the child should have gotten it right because there is only two genders and it's very confusing.
Totally understand. Yep, totally understand. And that's what we covered with the patrons. I'm trying to read what it is that you're wanting in public comment. Is that what you wanted in public comment?
I guess what I'm wanting in public comment is the district agreed.
I would love to speak that isn't about the field of psychology and what the field of psychology posits. And the field of psychology posits that research is currently ongoing. Whether or not we feel that, and to Trustee Taylor's comment, that is correct. It was only one social construct mentioned there, but that is the construct within the field of psychology. Not arguing whether we believe or should believe that. That's the conversation within the content presented. And two of the questions, particularly 21 and 24, again, even give the definition that is defined in the psychology course. Again, not whether or not we believe that and that's what we want it to be. This is what the psychology course is postulating. This wasn't an open-ended of what we believe, and if the child had been asked that question and then held wrong or right based on that. That's
Psychology class, is gender a choice? You're telling that child no because this is a psychological question, a psychology question, and it's a feeling or
no.
No, what?
This is research.
So really quick, Tracy, I think everybody knows that's why we're here. And I think that that's correct. So like, I want to make sure that we're reading the test correctly, that we're all here because that's what we discussed with the patron, is that had a child answered no to that question. So had a child said, is gender a choice? And many people have a belief that the answer, let me see this really quick. So really quick, it said, is gender a choice? So if you would have answered no, you would have failed that question. So that's why we're here, is that that's the main concern that we discussed in our meeting. So I think that's the concern. And so what they're trying to answer to you is that it's not necessarily what they do or don't believe. What they're trying to say is that this test was on psychology. So I don't know that anybody's arguing one way or another. I think that what happened in the meeting is that you have to, if you can't eliminate, like, there can be no elimination, because just like how you answered that question, is gender a choice? Had you answered it no, you would have failed. And we have many people who believe that way. So that's what spawned us calling a meeting to actually discuss that, because had they answered no, they would have failed. So you're right on with what happened, and you're right on with what happened in the class. Is that what she's asking?
If it's confusing me, it's gotta be confusing.
Yeah, it was confusing.
That's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can I?
Yeah.
Trustee
So-
Pearson, that's what we're trying to sate, is there is confusion based on that question.
Yeah.
This test is not a good test to be giving children.
Yeah.
Whatever you're labeling it, psychological, whatever, it's very misleading.
Yep.
And it's wrong.
Yeah.
However, the answer yes would have also gotten the child the wrong answer.
Yeah, either
Yes or
one.
no was not
It's
the answer. The answer was
the third
according to
without the social
psychology.
construct. Sure.
Research is still ongoing.
Yeah, so Trustee Pearson, I think we're all on the same page as far as the board is concerned, what the concern was. That's what we're trying to talk about. And it's not just going to be in that one class that it's discussed, it's going to be multiple classes. That's why we had to have a meeting. Is that if we don't address it now, even if we decide not to teach this class, which could definitely be an option, in the class where you'll find those things. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, and that would not surprise me. Actually, that's been my concern and one of the reasons I became a trustee.
Okay.
But man, I guess my biggest concern is I'm feeling like I'm hearing that this isn't okay. So that's not the case.
So I think that what we're trying to do is go through, because it's going to be found all throughout psychology. So I want trustees to understand it's not a one and done. So we may end up with this. Yep. And then now we're just going into what the patron concern was, what the test was, and the way the test was done. I don't think that anybody's saying one or the other. We're just trying to get all the information out there so you guys have it at this point. And we.
I am a registered nurse and I have a psychology degree. And I know what this can do psychologically, the way this question is worded. And I know the physiology of the human as well. So this is very confusing in many ways.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the trustees, so like I know Trustee Valle is speaking to that. I spoke to that in our patron meeting when I took our two patrons as their representative, that it's confusing, that we talked a lot about not having a specific social construct. So I genuinely feel like everybody hears the concern, or like everybody understands at the table where you're coming from.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so those were the questions that were brought forth on the exam that were concerning, and I think we clarified that those are concerning. And then there was information that was shared to us at that meeting around the textbook and some pages that were read from it. And so I went through, read all the pages that were brought forth, and the pages do discuss studies involving sex, biological sex, and the biological aspects of it. It does talk around sexual orientation. It talks around homophobia, and talks around Freud's theories in it. And so obviously, two hats here. The person education side who's taking psychology, some of these are familiar from remember taking like a college course and reading through some of those. The dad side of me is like, oh, these are things that I would want to know.
Yeah.
If they were in a class and have some knowledge of, because they're things that I would want to talk with my three daughters about. And have some knowledge on. So it was well, I guess, thankful that those were brought forth, and for us to kind of read through and be able to understand and discuss some of those differences of the text that brought forth these concerns.
Do you mind really quick, just just right back to center. Okay, so just so all trustees are aware. So the first portion was to show that this is going to be throughout our psychology curriculum, so that you guys are aware that we're going to see this likely more than. The second portion of this was to show the concerns, bring point out talked about it was under what we found.
You guys are following
So
this.
just making sure.
Okay.
So then what we did discuss with the patrons was being more aligned. So what is taught in intro courses across the high schools to make sure that there's alignment between what is taught in one course and the other course. Taught in dual credit courses across. What is taught in one dual credit course across the high school.
I think that that's what it is. Go ahead and try again.
So I think it became clear that
I think
we
our sound
needed
just
around some alignment with some of these things. And I thought that was something that we need to work on. And I shared that with the patrons that we would do that so that we can get some clarity around common syllabuses and common content that's taught across the district. That is a positive thing. That's something that we would try to do and like to do. We've been working a lot about that in our core classes, our math, science, social studies, and reading courses. It's something we need to do in our electives, but just haven't had a chance or opportunity to do that. And so we need to move towards that. But it brought up that need. We also talked about having better transparency. And as I just mentioned, some of those things that you read, those are things that I think the community and as a parent would want to know what is being taught in classes and how do we or do we not inform folks about that. And we need to get tighter and stronger in that and more transparent with that. So those are things that already have started a meeting with our high school principals to start talking around at least the transparency piece and at least the alignment piece. We'll be meeting with them next week and continue moving forward that. So, and I mentioned with that, I wanted to talk around the communication to one of the things that this brought up is how can we better communicate, particularly when students relying. We could have the courses linked to the things that are taught in it. I'd like to see some of the courses, particularly in courses like these, be more like college courses. You can actually see the
So in layman's terms, as we discussed that with the patrons, it was really more about that if we were, so if we pull, like if somebody's in the psychology track and that's something that they're wanting to learn and the child registers for said class, that parent would then get something that would say, this class covers things like gender identity. This class covers those types of things. If somebody was registering for that class, like that would be how specific that would need to get if that was something we moved forward with. And it would be an opt-in versus an opt-out. And so that was another thing that was discussed with those parents. I just want to make sure that, am I missing anything? So we discussed it. We discussed possibly like an opt-in or an opt-out. Of course, the option was on the table immediately when Dr. Russell and I discussed it the next day. Do we pull the curriculum? What does that look like? And that's why he's showing you guys kind of the stuff around how it's connected so that you guys have everything to consider of what we would need to do. So if we pulled said curriculum, do we take a look at psychology? Do we come up with that community standard? I've been talking about a curriculum review committee since we began talking about curriculum because I've always felt like that's what the community was asking for. We're carefully watching curriculum going forward. And we don't even adopt in the same way. So I can't foresee it happening. I think now it's as these pockets of curriculum come up, what do we want to do as a board? What is our first step? What is our second step, right? Because first step was, is this even approved? I mean, that's huge because we know we've had some sex ed curriculum, sex ed. I almost literally said the same word as Marco. And Marco, I don't have an accent. The sex ed, so we knew we already had sex ed curriculum that wasn't approved in union. And that was brought forward to us six months ago. It's a while. So first, to make sure, how did it, so time. And so then the second thing is what's the legality around having the board approve? Can we unapprove? Like, there's
Well,
next steps in all of this.
If I
Sorry,
might,
go ahead.
I think Dr. Russell is gonna kind of speak to all that.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so if we could just maybe go through what Dr. Russell's gonna
Love it.
present as far as the agenda, and then I think a lot of us have
Love
maybe
it.
some follow-up questions and some discussion.
So a couple of the options that we have, that we talked about is you could not teach the course. That could have some ramifications, particularly around the dual credit. I think that would be some concerns around that. Or you could not teach the standard. And as I mentioned, there were numerous standards in psychology, and maybe that's one of the standards that we don't. If we choose to, then how do we inform parents of that? And that could be another kind of option. So I think there's numerous options that we have to discuss going forward with that, and discussing that at what level do we teach that. So intro course, maybe you don't teach that intro course, but maybe that's part of the dual credit course only. I think those are some options that the board has to explore as well. So as I mentioned, we are going to do some work around class registration. I'm trying to do better so that we can inform our parents about what are in our content areas, and that would be something that will take some time. It'll take we have 240 subject courses.
Dr. Russell, if I could provide some context, course requests for next year have already happened at the high school level. So again, that timing factor of what we talked with the patrons about was having opt-in or clear syllabus as we head into the fall, and then working with our registration process for next year when those courses come for students signing up for what those courses might be, because that's how we build our schedule and what goes off there. So again, just to provide that context of timing and what that looks like.
But it might even look like somebody registers for a course like you were talking about, and there's an automatic trigger. It sends an email through Power School or whatever to the parent saying, hey, you're a student, because my student registered for classes. I didn't know what she registered for until I got the,
Yep.
And
Yeah.
she didn't have that conversation with me.
Yep.
So she was grounded for like a month and a half, but no. But when they register, then a trigger would go, that would trigger an automatic email maybe to the parent and say, hey, your student registered for this class. Here's what it covers. You might want to have a conversation or whatever.
Well, and there was a level of complexity because the teacher actually asked students if they wanted to leave the class without discussing it with parents. And so that's why that became a big focal part of our discussion is exactly what you just said. I would also preference that trigger that said, these are the things that are outlined in this course. And it might not just be around gender. It could be other things if we wanted it. Yeah.
Well,
It could be anything we want.
The board passed a policy about not having teachers ask students their preferred pronoun. That was something that along the same lines. We want to make sure parents are in the know of what is going on in the classrooms and what's being taught. And so often, I'm a huge fan of opt-in on everything.
Same.
Honestly, it's too often that the parents are the last to know. Well, you should have opted out. I didn't know. I had no idea. So I like that if there's some way that we can automate that. I'm looking over there at Tyler, but if there's some way we can automate that registration process, I don't know, but definitely an opt-in.
We do want to do that. We also want to discuss what happens if the opt-in doesn't come back. What do we do with the child then and the student then, and what does that look like? Because there are times where we will send information out and we won't get anything back. And then what does that leave us? Does the student not enroll in that course? Do they enroll in that course? So we'll have to work through that. I think that should be.
Well, since you posed that question, my initial response is going to be that student doesn't enroll until the parent responds.
Or guardian.
And maybe there's a second option, third option that student is dropped into until we get notification from the parent that it's okay. And I know that's going to be.
That is how most opt-in forms work.
Yeah.
It is. It just
Black and white.
Black and white.
in the logistics of thousands of high school students in courses and having 30% not have an opt-in, where do those students go in the day?
It will become logistical.
It will logistical nightmare in a large high school.
Yeah.
But I think this is an important enough topic to get into those logistics.
What we're talking through.
Which is why I wanted to make it a work session so that we understood the impact and how that would look based on our decisions and what we decided to do now. There was another, it came and went the second that you said opt-in. Man, you said something else really good, and there was something else I needed to give you.
Usually say anything.
You don't usually. So I was like so excited. I was coming right to you. There was something, the opt-in. Yes.
Sorry, this is Trustee Simpson. I'm just wondering if it could be something, I know that there is time spent during the registration process where, you know, it's not like you have to register today and this is the only time you've seen the course catalog. So I'm wondering if that opt-in form could be something that could be given at that point and just explained, like, you need to have this filled out to be able to register for this course, or else you won't be able to register for the course, kind of thing, like ahead of time. So it's not like we're waiting on FTE and deciding, do we need a teacher to teach this or not, kind of thing.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I remember passing a policy to make schools safe. You know, make sure everything, we concentrate on studying. So no flags of any kind that's disruptive, nothing that's kind of weird. Let's just keep students to learn, right? And I feel like with this, it should be the same. I don't understand why we need to have classes that are not safe for everyone. Why can't we have classes where parents can just trust that we're gonna teach the right thing? Why do we need to have all these signatures here and there? You know, if we do things right, I don't know what that means, but I feel like if you do things that is safe for everyone, then we won't have to do all that. I was thinking that if we create policy that outlines the things that we do not as agree to have being taught in the school, then we can have that all school classes, curriculum, whatever it is, they can have to meet that demand. And if we see something or they see something that doesn't align with that, then they can pull that part out. They can not teach that standard. And if that doesn't meet the dual credit, to me, it's like, then we don't need to have it, you know, because we pick what dual credit classes we have, right? I mean, it's not like the state's demanding, okay, you guys need to teach this, this, and this. I think we can have the options of what dual credit classes we can teach in the school. Of course, the more the merrier, because we want to do our kids right. And there's a lot of good students out there that want to maximize their college credit. But at the same time, we don't want to compromise with the values of our community. So to me, why go through this process when you know?
Well, I think because the process is good in general.
I like
Better
opt-in
information for
forms.
parents is what we need to do.
I mean,
Plain and
I'm
simple.
not
So
totally
I think
disagreeing that we
whether-
couldn't do that, but I like
Not
opt-in
disagreeing, but
forms.
I think we need to work on it as a district.
Trustee Taylor, Trustee Pearson had,
Let me move her over.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second, Trustee Pearson. I'm gonna move you over to Dr. Russell.
she's on mute.
Okay. Trustee Pearson, you're right next to Dr. Russell.
Okay, should I be going through my phone or the computer?
Phone, stay on the phone. You're super clear on the phone. Just had you muted is all.
Okay, so you can hear me.
100%.
Okay, so my concern is, and maybe Chrissy can help me with policies, as you guys are talking about opt-in, opt-out, and there are concerns that our community has with it, these curriculums going against our values. And because we have, a huge student body, it's hard sometimes to not let some of this get through the cracks. And so I kind of agree a little bit with Marco in the sense that if we just, and I know it's going to be hard to monitor, that's why we need the review curriculum where we can get in and we see this kind of stuff. And if we just eliminate it, if that's what the community wants and that's what the parents majority wants, then we need to not have it in our schools. And one of the reasons my big concern, one, is we recently received an email from a parent who a teacher went up to the daughter and asked her to be a boy and wanted to know if he wanted to choose different pronouns without asking the parent, doing it behind the parent's back. So what kind of policies and safety do we have where if the teachers are doing this, where there's not even an opt-in form, the teachers are just feeling they can do these things? Where's the policies on this? That I mean, maybe we need to have a meeting with their teachers, telling them to do this, or is there a policy that they think they can?
You give it back.
Yep, 1 second. Tracy, I'm moving you. Or Trustee Pearson, I'm moving you.
Yeah, Tracy, I never received that email, so if you do have the email, please send that on. I'm not aware of that situation. It kind of actually does segue into the last part we can talk
I
around
know.
patron concerns. We
It
want to
was
talk
the
through that.
email, you did respond to the email. It's the one where she also attached pictures and images of pride flags and
Janelle?
say, you know, all
McIntyre.
the different sexes with the circles and the crosses.
Yeah,
You do
East
have that
Valley.
It
email.
was, but I don't remember anything about a teacher asking pronouns. It was
Oh,
around,
it was in
around
that same-
images that were up in the school.
It was in that same email that
Trustee,
you responded to.
I'm gonna pull the email
and
right
I
now.
think
so I
that
can
would
read it.
We're
probably
gonna
be
look at,
something
we're
also
gonna double
to.
check it. Tracy, thank you. Other questions we have at all?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to figure out, you said that it's good for school, but obviously some things are not coming out too good. So I'm trying to figure out what you mean by that. I mean, it is good policy, you said.
Informing parents is good.
Yeah, informing parents is good, but having their trust up, informing is never gonna stop. Right? But we're always looking to be open. I'm just wondering, I mean, with regards to what I said, what part of it is not good with regards to what
What
I
I'm
said?
trying to
Because I
address
never
is
said
actually
that.
what Trustee Kirkman just mentioned. When I register, I have no clue. That's an issue. And I want to address that issue. Parents need a clue what classes your kids are taking. So we need to do something where we can make that done almost immediately through some sort of electronic way. That's what I'm trying to express, if that makes sense.
Okay. But about,
Russell? Have not read the email. Could you answer just the question in general? If a teacher is doing this, what is the policy? Why did or she feel that she is allowed to do this with the parent's child? And in the email, it also
I've got it. I can read it.
emphasized
Through
that
the
the
email,
principal took the teacher's side, not the parents.
You want to read the email?
Yeah, I'll read the email. Trustee Pearson, I'm gonna read the email for everybody, so it's public record. I've got it. Okay, you ready?
Who is it from?
Yep.
It's from Janelle McIntyre.
Oh, man.
MCE. And the way that it comes through, if you want to read it at the same time, is it's JAY. Okay. Dear board members, I'm including recent images from the 6th grade hallway of East Valley Middle School. This 6th grade hallway is filled with gay pride flags and other gay pride symbols. As an NSD mother, I would find this offensive in any school hallway, but I'm especially concerned with the 6th grade teachers at East Valley Middle School have decided that children should be declaring who they want to have sex with in the 6th grade, meaning with pronouns. I have had 3 children attend East Valley. I removed my daughter this year and sent her to Lone Star after a second teacher asked her to declare her preferred pronouns. This teacher gave my daughter the opportunity to change her gender without consulting her father or I. Matt Chris defended the right of his teacher to ask my daughter whether she might want to be a boy this year over our right to raise our daughter according to our values. Teachers who go behind the parents' back to ask pronouns and who encourage students to contemplate and confide their alternate sexuality are deliberately sexualizing young children and deliberately driving a wedge between children and their parents. This is reprehensible, immoral, and should not be happening in a family-oriented community like Nampa. They are perpetuating sexual confusion in a time of life when kids are just barely discovering the opposite sex. Now these teachers are telling children in the most vulnerable, insecure time of their lives that they might be kept, or if body who doesn't feel awkward in their body 6th grade. So it's like a statement and then a question. Might actually be the opposite gender. Shame Nampa School District for sowing confusion in children with vision families. Shame on Matt Crow allowing leftist teachers to take over the indoctrination of 6th graders. Shame on these teachers and one counselor for sexualizing our children. Please teach math, science, history, writing. Leave sexual discussions for the family. Thank you, Janelle.
So that was addressed with the teachers. We said we don't ask pronouns. That was addressed with the administration, that we don't ask pronouns. That is something that we don't ask in schools. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, specific to trustee Pearson's question, we do have a policy because this
Correct.
board did pass a policy about that pronoun, and I think Clerk Lamont's looking for
I'm
it.
looking for it down.
And so, and this goes back to another question that we had with the same email with the pictures of the pride flags and all that, because we passed a policy that said, and you address this, you did address this with the school and other administrators. And you know, I agree with trustee Pearson. Why, when there's policies in place, why is this still happening?
Sixth grade.
Yeah.
Whether it's sixth grade or 12th grade or first
Any
grade or
grade,
kindergarten,
policies
it's
there.
a policy, it's a district-wide policy.
Partly because you're gonna have some staff that won't follow policy.
Yeah.
Guys, we really have to have silence. We really want to keep going.
We have 20 minutes.
We have,
Or 19. It is the classroom policy, and I think we should discuss policy implementation and accountability at a future meeting,
Yeah.
since this is curriculum
yeah,
review, and we can add that to a future meeting.
Well, but this does lend a little bit to this discussion because
It
if
does.
whatever this,
I think it would be helpful if you.
but what if
answered.
this board decides on a curriculum that this is not going to be taught? And then we have, for lack of a better term, rogue teachers that are teaching it anyways.
It's a personnel issue.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
Address
is.
it as a
And
personnel
that's
issue.
what's so difficult for, you know, because there are rules, there are laws, there are
Mhm.
things that have to be followed. You can't just fire somebody. It's not that. So it does become a personnel issue. And I think that's, you know, that's always a concern of mine is particular teachers and staff being held accountable. So it is part of this discussion at some point.
Absolutely. I also pulled that policy. It's 2525. I'm sending it to you now. Also, I'm going to remind you that the board governs. And so, but you also manage one employee. So when policy is approved and it's not
We-
implemented, you hold your superintendent
We got
accountable.
that. Absolutely.
So
We
you
understand.
guys are the what, he's the how. And so that's one of the ways that you'll be holding the district accountable.
And also, again,
It's his job to hold them accountable.
the principal encouraged this too. So if you have a teacher who's being supported by his principal, because I know you're the superintendent, and then you have the principals, and then you have the teachers. So you need to have all staff. So if you have the principal supporting the teacher, and I know we've had other teachers with similar problems. So I'm just wanting, you know, I just care for the parents of the
Dr. Russell.
community who are, you know, concerned, and it does.
Dr. Russell, trustee Pearson, really quick so that we can, just because we are going to have to find a stopping
I
point.
know.
Dr.
Okay,
Russell,
just-
do you want to update the board on how you handled that issue when it was brought to our
Sure.
attention and give everybody some clarity around this being brought to our attention, policy implementation, so that all trustees are aware, trustee or Clerk Lamont and I walked East Valley
Last week.
last week. So, this was something that just because everybody should know when this came to us, action was immediately taken. And then I did update trustees that I would walk calls. Was that it was, I think it was 2 weeks later, a week later.
Well,
And I walked East
Dr.
Valley.
Russell did update us and
Yeah, he did, but
made
that's-
it known to us.
Yeah.
that it happened. So I think I really want it to.
I want there to
we
be
get to
some
the-
clarity of this so that people understand what actions are being taken. Because we did just bring a situation where he did implement that policy, like he did go
Yeah, I got
and
it.
talk to
Yeah, I
that
understand.
school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just quickly, we did, so everyone's aware, we did speak with our administrators about the policy that was passed in January. We asked them to have conversations with teachers if they saw any images that violated that policy. We got this email then about 3 weeks later. So I gave a directive to every administrator that they needed to walk every classroom and they needed to report back to me that if they saw any images, they had to have a conversation with their employees. And I told them I was going to check off their school to make sure that they got back that. And so that's, and I believe we walked that school and didn't see any other images. So briefly, that's what we did.
Did they get anything put in their file for breaking?
It's the personnel issue and I can't discuss
Yeah,
it.
personnel issues can't be
Yeah,
discussed.
we don't know who it
No,
is.
just
Yeah.
to,
So,
I want to just clarify to the community that they're discussing two different incidents. And yes, I appreciate Superintendent Russell taking care of the policy we just passed regarding displaying the different pride flags and stuff, and I know that was handled well and taken care of, and thank you. But there is still the other issue of how to handle the pronouns and teachers and principals agreeing with that.
So one of the big things that came out of our meeting with the complainants of the patrons that brought this complaint forward was that the other issue is how do we as not patrons, but oh my gosh, I'm losing my words, people, how do they expect for teachers or for, help me with the act, like the, oh my gosh, I can't even think of my words right now, the activism, but like, what is the expectation? Like, how is a parent supposed to actually engage a teacher who's
Got those concerns.
who's being an activist?
Well, that
That
could
was
be
the
a
other thing.
That could be a discussion.
That
for
could be a
another time.
discussion for another time too, but that was one of the things that came up with it is like, how do we file a complaint if there's activism and the child's being heard? So that was something else that did come up that discussion.
It still follows with, I think, the last part that we're.
Yeah, it does.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, as far as informing the teacher, yeah. So one of the major things is, and I think this conversation speaks to it, provide context. Every one of us has stories and things around that, and we hear one thing and it's, well, that's the way it was. No, there is value in sitting down and having a conversation, as we did with the patrons who brought this to us. And then we can get to the bottom of what actually is the issue. How do we navigate those? There are times when parents may not feel comfortable talking to the teacher, although that as a former building level administrator and a teacher, that would be my first conversation is let's see if we can talk to the teacher and find out what the context is. If they don't feel comfortable there, come to me as the building level leader. If I'm in that spot, let's build some context so I can understand, and then it allows us to deal with that. If a parent goes through that process and then doesn't have clarity there, or we haven't come up with a solution, then you go to my boss, which if I was the building level leader at Nampa High, where I was last year, is the secondary director, where we would talk with that person. If that's not there, then we would get to the superintendent. And the process of that allows us to slow down and talk, allows us to actually understand and do the things we're doing right now, which is, can we understand the context? And are there things that are inappropriate that we need to deal with? Or are there things that are just questions that we need to answer? So again, if a parent doesn't feel comfortable talking to that teacher, then the first step would be calling in the building level administrator. And then if that isn't something that helps, then you come to the district office. That would be the director of secondary or L. Up to my desk is the superintendent of the board.
We think there is a process that if there is that occurring in schools and folks in school, please speak with the teacher. If you don't speak with the teacher, speak with the administrator. If you don't feel like that has been resolved, then go to the office of the director. If you don't feel like that's been resolved, then send it up to the assistant superintendent or superintendent level. If you don't feel like that's been resolved there, then the board needs to know.
Trustees, I think what they're referring to is policy 4120, the uniform grievance policy. I did, as this meeting was continuing, we currently have a policy 2540, because I didn't know we were going to discuss any grievance. This was the same uniform grievance process that had clunky process when it came to the selection of the other materials that the board discussed this year, and we came up with a different procedure. The current procedure for curriculum removal, I believe, I don't have it in front of me because I just passed all the copies but it is policy again, 2540. And I did email ISBA while we were there asking for them to submit their current model policy, because we did update our curriculum materials policy, but we have not updated this one. But it does say that the board will have a committee to do, so that might also change the process from the uniform grievance, just because that was the clunky part before as well with curriculum and materials.
And that's the purpose of this conversation.
Right, correct.
This last block here,
Yes.
is to maybe discuss what that process might look like. And at 10 minutes, we don't have time to do that.
Again, if it gets into a curriculum question, then definitely follow here. I think one of the challenges can become, it may not be a curriculum issue. It may just be a conversation issue of something that's going on, and do we get to policy? Because one of the conversations about asking pronouns, that's not a curriculum issue, that's a policy issue,
Yeah.
right? And so that would fall under 4120, that we would start that process and go through that. So again,
And I'm sorry, I brought this up because our topic is
Yeah.
curriculum review. I do not want to confuse the same.
Thank you.
I'm keeping us on
Thank you.
topic,
Thank you.
curriculum
Thank
review.
you. Yeah.
But I don't wanna make parents think that they can't approach the board and have to go through a 5-step process. There are some things that are very important, and sometimes it is important to just go and let us know what's going on.
I think
They
it's
always have that.
important. Yeah, they
Yeah,
always have
yeah.
that. We're not saying not. It's just that it's helpful when we have all the pieces
Yeah,
and
but I
we
don't
know
want
what's
people to
happened.
think that that's what the district's saying.
Oh,
That
I don't think that we
And
are.
then go through this, and then go through
No,
this. and
it's
then
just
go
a
through
process
this,
to
and-
help solve issues in a systematic way.
Yeah,
Had we to bring this, we needed to get why is this even being taught? Like, where is this in the like, why aren't we finding this? Because I'm 10 minutes. Go ahead,
I'm
sorry.
so
I totally
Chair
get it. Yeah.
Taylor. So can I just ask a quick question then? So as far as this curriculum that's being taught, that is the focus, or
Of tonight.
used to be the focus of tonight. What do we do now? Is there, and I talked to you a little bit earlier today, can we parse out as a board, can we legally parse out an adopted curriculum and say you can teach this, but you can't teach this, you can teach this? Or is, because the whole curriculum was adopted, is it an all or nothing thing?
Yeah,
And I
so
think
what-
you were gonna check with legal.
I did check with legal. The recommendation is because the curriculum was adopted, that the actual content that's taught within the course and the standards is through administration. And so that's something that you could ask the administration to re-examine the content that's taught in there, and then we could go through and look. And that's why I think one of the examples was, do we teach the standard? Is that something? I think I'd like to have those conversations with our high school principals. I'd like to hear from the psych teachers. I'd like to know what ramifications that would have for the dual credit courses, but that's very much an option that we could just say, we're not teaching it.
And using the national standards for high school psychology curricula, we default to that because we don't have
Having
state standards. So are there any other standards out there that we could look at that might be more in line with what this community might consider appropriate curriculum for psychology rather than national standards? Because we all know, you look at the research in here, I mean, all of the contributors, New York, Illinois, Florida, well, there's a Florida one, and a Utah, even Utah. But where this research is coming from, I'm saying, at a national level. So I don't know if there's other standards that we could look to, or other districts, I don't know.
Not aware either.
Okay.
Well, and in talking to the trustees that approved the motion, they were under, like, the way that it was understood is that if there was something that came in that went against those guidelines or community standards, that it wouldn't be taught by a teacher. Like, because I did do that too, talking
Yeah.
to the trustees who approved.
Sure,
So
sure.
I think some of that is actually out there that we could adopt it, but not teach it. But that's the issue. Why would we adopt what we don't want to teach? I think it just leaves us
Yeah.
open for
Yeah.
bigger issues in the long run. And so that was just some backstory because I talked to the trustees who did the approval as well.
and I think it goes back to what I was
Chair
saying.
Taylor.
Yes, trustees, you were not one of those trustees, no. No, sorry, go ahead. Yes, trustee Simpson.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt. I'm just trying to find a time to jump in. I think part of, that problem is when we don't have the standards and we just are relying on our curriculum team to go find them. So what I'm hearing is it's really important for us to task our district leadership with generating district standards where we don't have state standards, right? That have to be met, because we are in control of those, and our district is in control and can say these are the standards we want. And I don't think there's anything wrong or legally wrong to say we're not going to teach this part of this curriculum, because I will tell you, because of timing, we do things like this all the time where we're, as a math teacher, I'm looking at, well, I'm running out of time, and what are the most important things I need to teach kids, and I'm going to hit those things, right? So I may not use all of the curriculum that the district's provided, but I'm looking at what are the standards that are most important and how do I hit those and use use my resources to do that. I also think it would be amazing if we could get standards in front of parents and kids so they know, like Superintendent Russell was saying, like if they know when they sign up for the class, here's what I'm signing up for, or here's what I'm required to know if it's a required class. It just gives more knowledge to our parents, to our students, to our community about what's being done, which then I think leads to more involvement in the process, right? When you're able to see those things.
Trustee Simpson, does that finish your thought?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So we're down to 5 minutes. So what we need to decide now, did you have something you wanted
was
to
trying
add,
to
Trustee
say
Guy?
something.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go for it.
No, I just want to say that we as a board of trustees need to create the policy so that the standards that are set match the community values. And I think those policies, it is something I want to start working on and present it to you guys, because I feel like teachers are gonna go rogue anyway. Not all of them, I'm not saying all teachers, but there's always some. And we need to have it set in stone. That's all.
Anything else, trustees? We just need to conclude to decide, do we want to add this to the April 17th for further discussion? Do we want to give Dr. Russell some type of homework, bring it back as a special meeting? Like these are next steps so we can determine where to go from here.
I would like to add this to the April 17th meeting
Okay.
because I want public comment.
Yep.
I want to hear public input.
And the public can, and just so everybody
I know.
knows, the public can comment about anything at any time. I don't ever want the public to think that they can't comment about whatever they want to.
Right.
So just so we're aware, the public at any time can come in and share any comments with
Well,
us.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just, are you talking about email?
I'm talking about email, but I'm talking about like, I think that
Just
we
out of
got
the
into the
sessions
practice
before.
of
I'll tell you
just
after.
taking comments on things that we were gonna be speaking
Yeah,
to, or,
Absolutely.
but realistically, now that the way that we're running it, if a community member wanted to come in and talk to us about something completely.
Well, that's always
yeah,
been. It's
correct.
been that
I just
way
want
since this board's
everybody
been
to
in.
hear that's here. Yeah.
Okay, so, and there's value in listening to somebody comment.
Agree. Yeah.
Like to add it to.
Second, Trustee Pearson.
Um,
Okay. April-
If we have to stay here till midnight,
Okay.
sorry.
Trustee Simpson, go for it. You want to add it to the April 17th as well?
I do, and I would like
Or
to see
Steve Simpson?
sorry, can you hear me? Did you lose me?
Yep.
So I would
Yes.
like it on
No.
April 17th, but I would like to see any and all policy, whether we have it or not, or it's good or it's not, related to curriculum, so that we can review it and look over those things.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Simpson. Trustee Pearson?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with putting this on the agenda for April 17th. I think it would be implemented well from this meeting, where we can now, at the next meeting on Monday, the 17th, give the public time to comment on everything they've heard. I think it would be really good for the whole community to be able to have input after this meeting. And also, I'm hoping that maybe I can get some update, Superintendent Russell, on that one email in regards to the pronouns, maybe later in an email.
Yeah, I absolutely will. And I should address that with the school, all the schools,
Okay.
that we don't use pronouns.
Thank you.
And Trustee Valle, was there anything else that you wanted to add? You want it on April 17th as well?
No, yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, guys, so we will put this on the April 17th meeting. We will take public comment then as well, and we'll continue that discussion, and that's it. Yeah, that's it. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, guys.
I'm sorry, you must let them have the beginning at a work session.
No, it's a work session.
We don't have public input. This is just a dialogue, so I'm so sorry.
Anytime.
I know.
I was smart out. I got the email.
Listen, I appreciate you.
Yeah, no.
what time do we meet at 6? And I think what time do we have? 5:30.
This should be.
Okay, guys, listen, the meeting on Monday is gonna be at 6. That agenda will be posted momentarily, but at 6. Now wait, listen, if we anticipate